but we'll have to, I'll have to manage somehow. Okay, so let me share the screen again, and we'll try to pick up where we were. All right. Again, if it happens again, I got a message saying that my connection was unstable. If you just stay where you are, when I log back in, you know, unless something else goes wrong, should just be okay. So, so again, my apologies. Right. So these are not words that we're used to using, although we probably know what every one of them means, and we probably could have thought of them on our own, but we're just not generally doing that. And the more of these words that we can incorporate into how we describe our feelings, I don't know what your experience will be going forward, but for me, it certainly gives me a lot more range of ways to talk about how I feel, which eases frustration of not being able to adequately express my feelings. You know, when you can't adequately express your feelings, you think of a child. When they just get frustrated, they can't say what they want. They're not communicating. I mean, my dog, when she's trying to communicate with me and I'm not understanding, she gets frustrated. We all get frustrated when we're unable to communicate. We all need to communicate. So so what we have now is two parts to the 4-part process for nonviolent communication. And as I've said before, and I don't know if Brian was part of my lecture series of, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago when I did this, I did a 13, it was actually, I looked back, it was 13 parts series all summer long to nonviolent communication. I don't know if it'll be that long this time or not. But and I had an in-temple group. It was about 8 people that went through it all summer long with me in the temple. So it was a kind of an ideal situation because we could work one-on-one together and in little groups. And there is a possibility, I think, that I can set up little meeting rooms. And you know, if I get teacherly enough, maybe I can put you all together in little groups and have you all do exercises. I have to work on that. Okay, but getting back to this. So what we have now is we have observed. So I saw the car pull in front of me. I felt threatened. I felt unsafe. So, wow, that car pulled in front of me. I feel unsafe. Okay? So your partner says something. When I heard you say, repeat the words back, no value, you know, just because they said that dress doesn't look good on you, or, sorry guys, just because they said that shirt doesn't look good on you, doesn't mean they said you were ugly. You know, but usually that's how the conversation goes. You know, we go to all these really wild hyperboles. Is that the right word? Hyperbole? Yeah. We use these exaggerated statements. You said I was ugly. You know, so you can't go from you said I was ugly to I feel hostile or infuriated, you know, we could pick something like that. No, you can't do that because that's not what they said. What they said is, when I heard you say that my shirt doesn't look good on me, I felt what did you feel? I felt insecure. I felt provoked. Yeah. And I'm just pulling at straws here. Okay, so that's the formula so far. And then we'll go into I need, and then I have a request. So, you know, I need to feel not, you know, I feel to I have a need to not feel, what did I say, provoked. Could you restate that for me, please? Could you clarify what you meant? You see? So we acknowledge our feeling based upon an observation stripped of value or judgment. And from that, we identify our feelings, own them, own our feelings. This is how I feel. I would like to not feel that way. And the request I make is to give you a chance to explain. That's a rough idea of the formula. Now, sometimes we can't make the request. So the car pulled in front of me. They did not use a turn signal. I felt threatened. I have a need to feel safe. The only request you can make is to yourself to back off. You know, I mean, you can't, well, if you want to get into a road rage situation, I guess you could pull alongside the car, roll down the window. Hey, buddy, you know, I feel unsafe. Next time, could you use your turn signal? You could try that. It's probably not going to work. You know, maybe you'd arrive at the stoplight at the same time and be cordial enough to engage in a friendly conversation, but odds are that the other person is going to feel threatened because you're acting aggressively, you know, and so you have to kind of work with what you got. So sometimes you just have to let it go. So I feel threatened. The car pulled in front of me. There was no turn signal. I feel unsafe. I feel threatened. My needs are to feel safe. The only request that we can make to ensure that is back off. Let it go. It's out of your control. So we're not suppressing our feelings. We're acknowledging them. We're also acknowledging that in some situations, there's just nothing we can do. I felt threatened. I felt angry. I felt miffed. You know, how many people have used miffed for a mild irritation? I felt irritated. I felt miffed. I felt worthless. I don't know. Anyway, I felt inferior. There are any range of things that we could be feeling. Acknowledge them is much better than suppressing them. Honoring them, saying, you know, I felt threatened. It's often quite liberating to just say, that's how I felt. No guilt, no shame. That's how I felt. And that's the thing about feelings. A true, genuine feeling, there's no right or wrong feeling. You know, we might say, I shouldn't feel angry. Why not? Why shouldn't you feel angry? If that's what you're feeling, that's what you're feeling. Now, perhaps what you might not want to do is then go punch somebody out. So the feeling is not good or bad. You know, in Buddhism, we talk about, you know, observing our feelings and not being in a place of anger. But the way to get to no anger is to first acknowledge it, then find out what the root cause of that anger is. But we're not doing that as a society. Most of us are not doing it as individuals because we go from a value-based observation, a judgmental-based observation, quickly to reaction. That's not our Buddhist practice. And then once we catch ourselves, we suppress that. And so we're suppressing a reaction to a value-based judgment that is imaginary. It's not real. See, so we create this universe, this environment around us that's based on nothing. It's not even, it's not tangible. But when we can say, I saw this happen, I heard you say this, please clarify. Did I hear you correctly? when I heard you say that, it's like a pause button. It's saying, wait a second now. I'm honoring your speech. I'm not going to put words into your mouth. Maybe that's not what you meant to say. Maybe you didn't mean for me to interpret it that way. But we don't give space to those kinds of things normally. We just jump to, you said I was ugly. No, I just said that shirt didn't look good on you. There's two different things there. So I'm maybe using some bizarre, ridiculous examples, but I think that each of us, if we examine our lives, we can find similar situations that have occurred or do occur on a regular basis, which could benefit from a different way of approaching those kinds of conversations. We can certainly use it in our political discourse. We could certainly use that. And once you begin, I don't know how you all have been working on this idea of just the facts, a non-judgmental observation. Then when you think about this and you become more mindful of that in your own life, then when you read the news or when you listen to the news, you start being more aware of how much judgment there is that's been placed over by now very obscure facts. And we find that, you know, I scan through the news articles, and most of them are just judgments. They're somebody's opinion about something. If I whittle it down to just the facts that are known, most of the articles are worthless. Most of the articles contain very little news and a whole lot of opinion. It might be expert opinion, but I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. It's just one person's opinion. It might be 10 people's opinion, but it's still just 10 people's opinion. It's not facts. And so when we, you know, this is a skill that not only benefits us in our own communication, but in our own reception of the information we receive from outside sources. We can stop and say, wait a second. What you're saying is your opinion. What are the facts? What do we know? That's a great place to be able to start a conversation. Much better place to start a conversation from what we know as facts, stripped of values and of judgments, than have to wade through and chisel at and peel away judgments in order to get to facts or in order to talk to somebody. You know, when I can talk to somebody based on just the facts. And that's really hard to do even now. Even when you pin somebody down to, wait, we only know this amount of information. Still, people want to go to judgment. You know, it feels empowering. When I can overlay my judgments on my observations of my environment, it makes me feel powerful. But it's a false power. It's a power based on dominance. It's a power based on my mind over your mind. That you should accept my interpretation of events. Rather than, let's talk about the facts and let's each of us form our own opinions. So, I don't know how I'm going to put these together. I'll probably just have 2 recordings up there on the blog. So I'll save these for the blog. But in keeping with my sort of unofficial motto of everyone is a creator of content, we'll take some time out for thoughts, feelings, observations on what I've talked about so far. Everyone will have to say something.
I would say sort of two things. One is that, interestingly, while you were talking, I was looking at the wheel, especially talking about judgment, because being judgmental, which is a something that I have to work with a lot.
Yeah.
I noticed that it's right there on the outer end of the wheel, judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And you call it something without value, as you say, not putting a value judgment, but to label it not as a concept, but an actual feeling, denuded of its meaningful content, but just as raw feeling. And then I can like look at it pointing down the circle. It's a form of disapproval, and it's also a form of disgust. And to say, oh, when I'm being judgmental, I am expressing a form of disgust. And that's not a bad thing. I can say that without judgment. Having a feeling of disgust is not good or bad. It's something. And what does that mean now? And it's like you said, it's a pause button. And it allows me to sort of empty it of content and actually feel it and do something useful with it and become a more whole human being, as opposed to the instinctual reaction is to either lean into it and bathe in that feeling of being judgmental and never think about it, and also to also sit there and have a mind that says, I'm not a person filled with disgust. It's an illusion. It's a lie. Of course I have that. How am I going to be a human being with that?
Yeah. And so, again, everybody's free to do as they choose. But in the context of nonviolent communication, what I would encourage you to do is engage in that process with yourself. So rather than be judgmental about your being judgmental, engage yourself in the process of nonviolent communication. So have a communication with yourself. When I see this, when I saw that, when I heard that, I felt judgmental. I have a need not to be judgmental. What do I need to do? Now, we haven't talked about the last two parts in depth of the nonviolent communication, but we really should, not should, because it's not necessarily to should do anything, but you may find it beneficial to actually engage in the nonviolent communication process with yourself, rather than, and that's just my thinking. As I listen to you talk, it's sort of you were stepping outside of the process of nonviolent communication and being somewhat judgmental about yourself without any resolution other than you just didn't want to do it. So if you can, again, we'll talk about requests and needs, but when you can formulate a specific request to address the feeling, to make the feeling go away, because your need is for that feeling to, not be there sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to be there. But the process would be to identify what it is you need. What is unfulfilled that would take away this rush to judgment or this judgmental feeling. Does that make sense?
It does. It leaves me a lot to think about. Yeah.
So be kind to yourself. This is a very Buddhist practice. This is like the details, the detailed tools of the Eightfold Path that the Buddha didn't teach us. It taught us in a general way, and this sort of fits in. As we learn more about and practice this nonviolent communication, it's really, really, really beneficial and right in line with the Eightfold Path. And again, I will post a different feelings list. This one, I wanted to demonstrate how feelings, can go out, and they're different hotnesses or different temperatures to our feelings. Some of them are just raw, and but then sometimes we stay with the raw feeling word because we lack the vocabulary to make it, fine tune it a little bit. And you had a second thought, a second point? Or was that both of them?
You know what? I had one, but I lost it. So it can stay where it can be empty. It arose and it extinguished.
Remember, there's no bad feelings. Feelings are not good or bad. These are not good or bad feelings. They're just feelings. Honest. We're human. We feel these things. What we're trying to do is to change what we do in response to these feelings. So, yeah. Trey, Bill?
Yes, I would. I was just going to say that I had a tendency to look at this feelings chart the same way, kind of, that Brian had suggested. I started seeing it as difficulties I have communicating with other people rather than with communicating with myself. So now that you mentioned that, I'm back into a introspective state where I'm trying to re-look over all these and kind of figure out how they're playing into, like my own judgments and values that I apply toward myself, because that was the last thing from my mind is, interacting with other people, or interacting with myself. I was thinking about how all this stuff is things I do to or with other people. And it's, kind of interesting that you remind me to think about how I do this to myself. And now that I look at it, I'm like, wow, guilty, getting at myself with some of this stuff too.
Well, go lightly on your guilt there. Maybe you have a need for guilt. But no, seriously, yes, we can look at this and we can say, wow, I am a very judgmental person. Okay, well, that's describing maybe what your actions are. But what are your feelings? When you feel judgmental, what are your needs? I could say I'm a very insecure person. But that doesn't give me anything. That just sort of leaves me hanging there as imperfect. When I feel insecure, what do I need? Validation? Where am I going to get that validation? What kind of validation would take away that insecurity? Would it even indeed take away the insecurity? Would validation make me feel secure or allow me to feel secure? Perhaps not. Perhaps that's just something that I'm not really clear on. And I haven't really explored it because I'm too busy condemning myself as being insecure, an insecure person, rather than saying, no, my feelings are insecure. So, I could say, I'm quite a confused individual. Well, that sort of just leaves me out there. Well, what do I do to become unconfused? But my feelings sometimes are confused. And for that, what I need maybe is a little bit more clarification, a little bit more introspected into finding out what's going on inside of me. But that doesn't make me a confused person. Actually, that makes me a pretty spot on observant person. So again, these are not labels to apply to yourself. They're feelings, just feelings, okay? And for that, maybe the other list may be a little bit more helpful. So again, when I post the other list, take a look at it as well. Like I said, I have this one here. This is the one I used in the prison book. I think I used this one in the prison book. I know I typed out a list, and I also had a Spanish list. I didn't guess any of you all would need a Spanish list. On the web page, I probably will post the Spanish list because Spanish people, there's a translator who's working on translating some of this stuff. So, I'm a pretty sarcastic individual sometimes, most of the time. But that's different from my feelings of I feel sarcastic. Subtle difference anyway. Okay, Bill, your turn.
Actually, I think you have just answered a question or an observation I made as the feeling or otherwise, because you have ashamed is there after guilt, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It can help you make, all of these can help you make corrections. So if something makes you feel ashamed, don't do it again, you know, so.
Well, you know, and here's the thing, nothing can make you anything, because then it would be possible for something to make you enlightened. So just, you know, our language, you know, I love language. I'm not very good at it sometimes, but it's really important. What we say influences. We don't think about it, but it greatly influences, and oftentimes in a negative way.
Yeah.
Influences what we think. And you think about language is our thoughts. But all the time, not all the time though, is our language expressing our thoughts. We sometimes forget that. And so then our language does influence our thought, but that's not what we originally were trying to think. That makes sense. So here's an example. You made me angry. You know, he made me angry. Well, that's impossible. But we don't think about how impossible that really is. Because it's just easy to say, well, you made me angry. In other words, I'm going to transfer the blame of my anger feelings to someone, somebody, someplace, something. And if that were possible, if it were possible for somebody to make you angry, think about the other 10 worlds, and that would mean it would be possible for someone to make you enlightened. And I think we all might agree that that's impossible. And if it's impossible for someone to make you enlightened, then it's impossible for someone to make you angry. You became angry. Own it. You feel anger. You feel angry. I feel angry. Own it. There's nothing wrong with feeling angry. It's one of the 10 worlds, being in anger. It's what we're going to do about it. Are we going to act unskillfully and then cause someone harm or hurt because of our feeling of anger? Our feeling of anger sometimes makes us feel helpless. Sometimes when we feel angry, we feel our options are limited. Knowing that, do I really want to hurt somebody in order to try to alleviate my anger? Is that really going to solve my anger? So, you know, our language is really important. And, you know, I think it's important to try to begin to kind of rope it in a little bit and be a little bit more precise in our speech, because that will help us be more precise in our thinking. You know, right speech, right thought. You know, another big one. Some of you all heard me. I think Bill's heard this. And but. You know, they're two different words. They don't mean the same thing. But negates everything that came before it. You know, and includes the stuff in front of it. So I try to use and as much as possible, and but very rarely, because very rarely does the word but truly apply. So I'll tell you a bizarre incident, and this is being recorded, so it's really bizarre. It's a dream, okay? It's a dream. I don't know what the context of the dream was exactly, but I was walking down the street, and there was this, you know, I like to talk to people randomly, and I'll just have conversations. And there was this little girl, or this girl walking beside or along the street also, and I said, hello, and or I think that's how I said anyway. And she said, I'm a Girl Scout, but I'm an alcoholic. And I said, no, you're a Girl Scout and you're an alcoholic. So you see, one doesn't cancel out the other. Like I said, that's pretty bizarre, but it's quite illustrative of the concept. Is that just because she was an alcoholic didn't negate her being a Girl Scout. She's both, you know. So,
sorry.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about nobody can make me angry. Anger arises in me, and then it's what I do with it. That whatever the provocation is. How does that work the other way around? Like somebody says to you, you made me angry by doing X, and they articulate the thing, and it's like, oh yeah, I did do that.
Well, you know, so you could use the technique that my partner and I used to use when he was alive, and we say, no, I didn't make you angry. I can't make you enlightened. That's probably not.
Yeah.
That's how spouses talk. You know, but to a friend, you could say, well, you know, first off, you could acknowledge if there's truth in what they say, you can acknowledge the truth and refute the falsehood. So acknowledge the truth. Yes, I did say that. And I understand how that could cause you to feel angry or to feel anger. And without going into a big dissertation, just gently nudge them to that way of thinking. You know, whatever you think is appropriate in the conversation, if the person is open to a little bit more introspection or a little bit more guiding, then you could say, you know, it's true, I said that, and I was wrong to do that. And I acknowledge your feeling of anger. And I also hope that you can own that feeling as something that occurred within you in response to something that I said, but I did not make you feel that way. Now, some people can't handle that. And so you just don't want to go there.
Right.
But you can still correct them by just saying, I acknowledge what I said, and I apologize for what I said. And I can see how that made you feel angry.
You know, it's funny here listening to you again. I realized I said I thought I got it, but I didn't get it, and I'm still going to have to work because I was genuinely thinking along the lines of, yes, I'm responsible. Like nobody makes me angry, but I still can make people angry. But it was the same mistake. I'm not going to correct anybody until I am firmly established in the interdependency of this thing that exists and is not made by one or the other.
You know, we can acknowledge our participation in the environment without accepting responsibility. And we have a certain responsibility to try to guide people to their enlightenment, to cause them great joy. That doesn't mean we have to own all of their misthoughts, all of their unskillful thinking. Does that make sense? We have an obligation to do our best to cause no harm or to cause the least amount of harm.
I don't want to eat up all the space. Taking responsibility is something I've been struggling with understanding because I feel like in my life there are things I do need to take responsibility for that I haven't. Oddly enough, connected to this wheel because there's a lot of those raw feelings that I've just acted out of and not processed in a wholesome way.
Yeah.
And those things are out in the world, they're done. But, you know, it's this idea of how can I at one time, like you say, I didn't make somebody angry. Somebody didn't make me angry. Not taking responsibility in that way, but also taking responsibility for the things that I have been the cause of and how to own that. It's a struggle. And I don't want to eat up all the space of the meeting with that.
Oh, that's okay. So these are good points. And first off, I need to honor Bill's time. And I know that, Bill, are you teaching today?
Yeah. Yeah, I do have one, and if you start the service and I need to leave, I'll just shut the door very quietly behind me. But there was an observation that I made through everybody else's conversation. Was, I think the skill, because we are going to feel these things, and you know, and as you said, it's there's nothing wrong with feeling them. The skill is probably the speed with which we recognize them, and then we can act appropriately.
Practice.
Which, yeah.
Practice. Yeah. If you don't practice this, if this is just mere theory that you listen to here and you think about in passing, it's not going to work. This takes dedicated practice. This takes holding a 3x5 card in your hand with all 4 points and going through them step by step as many times during the day as you possibly can. You're standing in line, you're starting to get irritated. Okay, I see this in line at checkout, sorry. You're standing in line at the checkout counter. I observe this. My feelings are this. My needs are this. What requests can I make? What's my request? Or, you know, you're sending an email to somebody or engage in a conversation and you say, slow down. Wait, let me try something. You know, just ask people permission to experiment. Just say, you know, I'm trying to learn a new skill. They may be intrigued. You know, say, wait a second. I'm trying to learn something new here. Would you mind if I practice this? It won't take long. And then state what you observed. Engage them in the process. That's how you're going to really learn. And you may teach them something as well. If you don't practice it, I mean, you really got to do it. You know, yeah. Teach somebody, that's a good way to learn something too. Yeah, Bill?
Yep, I think that's...
Okay, Trey.
I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind restating those 4 phrases that you just did, because I was writing them on a little piece of note paper I was going to put in my pocket for today.
Okay, that's good, yes. So the 4 parts to the nonviolent communication process are, and again, you know, I've only covered 2 of them, one of them in great depth, because it's fundamental. If you don't get this first one.
I just missed that one picking up. Can you start again, please?
I haven't started.
Oh.
The first one is fundamental. You got to know that. I haven't talked about all 4 of them in depth. Okay, they are, number 1, observe. Observation. And you can put down no value, no judgment, whatever, but observation. Feelings. What are your feelings? 3 is what are your needs? You might not have any. You might be okay with feeling disgruntled. You know, most of us would like to feel gruntled. You know, so you know, my need is to feel gruntled because I feel disgruntled. I don't know what the heck that means, but anyway, I'm always kind of amazed by the word disgruntled. Okay, so observation, feelings, needs, request. What request can you make? What is your request? What do you've identified your need to alleviate the feeling. Can you state a request? Sometimes there's no one to make a request to. Sometimes you have to turn that request to yourself. And we'll talk about this more later, but OFNR. OFNR. Observe, feeling, needs, request. If we're in conversation, when I heard you say that, and try to take that tone out of your voice that I just had, when I heard you say that, you know, when I heard you say that, I felt this. I'd kind of like to not feel that way. Could you clarify what you just said? Could you restate it? Did I hear you correctly? Could you correct me if I'm wrong? That's a great one. Could you correct me if I misheard you? Inviting someone into your process is really empowering for both of you. And most of the time we don't, we know we could do that, but we don't think about it because we're too busy engaged in another kind of conversation. But when we can think about nonviolently communicating, how do we communicate? Connection, communicate, connect. When I heard you say that, I felt hurt. I'd kind of like to not feel hurt. Could we talk about, could you help me understand? Did I misunderstand you? Am I jumping to a conclusion? Did I miss something? It's not assuming, well, it's not this whole passive aggressive thing. It's also not a codependent thing. Gosh, I must be a terrible person to have misunderstood you. No, we're not saying that. We're admitting to the possibility that we may have misunderstood, and we're inviting them to help us understand. Maybe we did. Maybe they didn't mean what they said. Maybe they meant it, absolutely. And then you just have to think, okay, well, then you have to say how I feel. You start the whole process over again. You may have to keep repeating through this cycle. Well, my needs are not to feel that way. And my request is, I hate you. No. Could you keep your opinion to yourself? I had a supervisor that used to say, your opinions of me are none of my business. Meaning, please don't share your opinions of me with me. Keep your opinions of me to yourself, because really I don't care. So you just keep working through this process. And the more you do it, the better able you will become at identifying your need and making the request. And like I said, we haven't gotten there yet. There's a whole lot to the request part. I've just given you some samples. Okay? Yes. So Brian, write down your questions, write down your thoughts. They're recorded so we can review them and we can get to them next time. And if that's okay with you, hopefully it is, because we're almost out of time. And just a little point of clarification for you, and the others have heard me say this before, and for anybody who's listening, this time online has to fill many functions. And one of them is Sangha building. And service, we can do service anytime. We all do our service every day, or maybe once a week or once a month. Whenever you do your service, it's okay. We all do our service. And we will certainly engage in some service activity, some ritual activity in just a moment. But this time together is mainly about how to build a Sangha. And, we can go sit in silent meditation, we can go chant, but we don't often get a chance to communicate with each other and to talk to each other and to share, be honest and vulnerable with each other. And so that's why sometimes I will go over or be rather lengthy in the Dharma talk, because I consider it part of our Sangha building. Okay, so enough of the announcement. I'm turning off, hopefully I'm just recording this. I'm going to stop sharing. And yes, I'm still recording, good. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off, and what we're going to do today is just Jikage and chant Odaimoku until roughly around 11:30. All right. I thank every one of you for your comments, for your participation today. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully you've gotten something from it as well. And hopefully I didn't drive you all the way. No, Bill, I hope you have a wonderful class today.
If I may add, I'm sorry to cut you. If I may add something very quickly, I do appreciate you doing the Dharma talks, because like I said, when I came to you, I was 40 years into reading books and nobody to ask any questions on. So I agree, or I appreciate your efforts on that.
Well, thank you. And I remember you coming to the feedback. I miss that. I do. I like Syracuse, and it's supposed to snow today, and that's really cool, and I'm excited about that. But yeah, I miss the space there in Charlotte. So, okay, I'm going to turn around and turn on the candles and change the camera view so that you're not looking exactly at the back of my head. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, excuse me, Otera. Yeah, move. Yep. Dog. Okay. And oops, turn off the recording. All right. For those listening to the recording, thank you. And please join us next week.